Why Elsa Dutton narrates Yellowstone's prequels, but not Kevin Costner's series. Watching the 1923 Season 2 premiere might have some Yellowstone fans wondering why Elsa Dutton, Isabel May, narrates the prequels, but not Kevin Costner's series. A simple answer exists. The young female narrator with a thick Southern accent hails from the cast of 1883, which introduces the earliest members of the Dutton family tree. Elsa joins her parents, James Tim McGraw, and Margaret Dutton, Faith Hill, as they journey northwest from Texas to Montana on a variant of the Oregon Trail. Despite her indomitable spirit, Elsa Dutton died at the end of 1883, setting up her family's next endeavor as the stewards of the largest ranch in Montana. Elsa's fate, in 1883, inspired the family to settle in Montana so they could live where she died. The Dutton family's journey picks up in 1923 on the land where she was laid to rest. Elsa's recurring narration makes her immortal in the Yellowstone franchise despite her fate. Still, there's a reason Elsa doesn't recur throughout Yellowstone, as in Taylor Sheridan's prequels. Elsa Dutton doesn't narrate the original Yellowstone series, mainly for logistical reasons. 1883 debuted on Paramount Plus between 2021 and 2022, years after the flagship began in 2018. So, for starters, the main series predates Elsa's pivotal narration. Isabel May was cast as Elsa Dutton years after Sheridan created his flagship Yellowstone series, which relies on modern characters like Kevin Costner's John Dutton and Kelly Rayleigh as Beth to tell the story instead. 1923, the continuation of 1883, includes Elsa's narration despite the character's death. It makes sense that Elsa returns, explaining what happened to her mother and father. Elsa's narration in 1923 is organic despite her death, since she continues the story she began. While it makes sense that Yellowstone couldn't include Elsa before the character existed, it's still worth considering why the flagship didn't include her narration more in later Yellowstone seasons. Considering that the modern Dutton family has forgotten Elsa's spirit, it didn't make sense to include Elsa Dutton's narration in Yellowstone until the Season 5 finale. In Yellowstone's series ending, Elsa Dutton's narration tells the story of the promise that her father made. Elsa's narration talks about how her family has been forgotten by its modern characters, which makes sense since more than 100 years separate them. Elsa's absence in Yellowstone makes her return in 1923 Season 2 even better. Elsa has proximity to the 1923 characters since her brother, Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklenar, is central to the story. Elsa's narration caps 1923 Season 2's premiere after a mountain lion appears on the Dutton family's porch in 1923 Season 2, Episode 1. Elsa describes the fierce cycle of winter as the killing season, which gives the episode its title. Unfortunately, Elsa knows the nature of life and death better than most. In the sprawling universe of Yellowstone, where legacy, land, and loss intertwine across generations, the voice that carries the weight of history is just as important as the story itself. It is Elsa Dutton, the free-spirited, ill-fated daughter of James and Margaret Dutton from 1883, who narrates both 1883 and 1923. But when the modern-day Yellowstone series unfolds, it is not her voice that lingers over the Montana plains. It is silence, or rather, the unspoken echoes of history. The choice of narrator is never arbitrary in Taylor Sheridan's world. Elsa's voice is ethereal, untethered by the confines of the living, because she belongs to the land in a way that few characters do. Her death in 1883 is the very reason the Duttons settle in Montana, tying her spirit to the soil of the Yellowstone Ranch. She is both a witness and a harbinger, a ghostly guardian of her family's fate. Through her narration in the prequels, she provides an omniscient perspective that connects the past with the present, a voice transcending time to remind us that history repeats itself in cycles of sacrifice and survival. But why does her voice vanish by the time we reach Yellowstone, where John Dutton, played by Kevin Costner, stands as the last great protector of his family's empire? To answer this, we must first understand the thematic shift between the prequels and the present-day series. 1883 and 1923 are deeply rooted in the pioneering spirit, in the formation of legacy. They are stories of struggle, migration, and the foundation of something meant to endure. Elsa's narration serves as a bridge, guiding us through the birth of the Yellowstone Ranch, explaining the costs paid in blood and sorrow. She is the past made present, the soul of the land whispering its truths. In 1923, she continues her narration posthumously, as if watching from beyond, tying together the experiences of her uncle, Jacob Dutton, and his wife, Kara, as they defend what her father and mother fought to establish. Her voice reminds us that even in death, she is the thread that connects generations. By the time we reach Yellowstone, however, the land speaks for itself. The prequels required Elsa because they were tales of inception, stories that needed an omnipresent storyteller to frame the chaos of frontier life. In contrast, Yellowstone is about preservation rather than creation. John Dutton does not need a narrator to tell his story because he embodies it. He is the living history of his ancestors' sacrifices. His decisions, his battles, and his pain are etched into the landscape itself. Another reason for Elsa's absence in Yellowstone may be tied to perspective. 1883 and 1923 are stories that take place largely in the past, where the viewpoint of an omniscient narrator feels natural. But Yellowstone is in the now, told through the immediate experiences of its characters. It is a world of consequence, where the past looms but does not dictate. In this way, the absence of Elsa's voice is a storytelling decision that underscores the weight John carries alone. He is disconnected from the spiritual guidance of his ancestors, left to navigate his struggles without their direct wisdom. It is also worth considering the narrative device itself. Elsa's narration in the prequels provides poetic, often tragic reflections on fate and destiny, fitting for a world still defining itself. Yellowstone, however, is grounded in raw realism, where characters do not reflect so much as they act. The show thrives on its immediacy, its tension, and the unpredictable choices that shape the present. The poetic musings of a long-dead ancestor would clash with the rugged, unrelenting nature of the modern-day conflict over the land. That said, the spirit of Elsa Dutton is still very much present in Yellowstone, even if her voice is not. She is in the way John clings to the land with the same ferocity that his forebears did. She is in the bloodline of the Duttons, in the tragedy that seems to haunt them at every turn. She is in the wind that howls through the valleys, in the unspoken knowledge that every inch of Yellowstone Ranch was paid for with suffering. Taylor Sheridan's choice to use Elsa in the prequels and silence her in the main series is a masterstroke in storytelling. It respects the idea that history belongs to the past, while the present must contend with its own burdens. Yellowstone is not about reflection, it is about survival. And in a world where John Dutton fights battles not with words but with action, there is no need for narration. The land speaks, the past lingers, and the Dutton legacy endures, with or without Elsa's voice to remind us why. Her story has already been told. Now the living must write the rest.